I remember the first time I heard about Hebden Bridge. Nestled in the heart of West Yorkshire, it was a town that seemed almost untouched by time. Quaint stone buildings lining the narrow streets, surrounded by rolling hills and dense woods. It was the kind of place where people knew their neighbors, where children played outside until dusk without a second thought. Life here moved at a gentle pace, and for many, it was the perfect place to raise a family. But in November of 1994, something happened that would change this town forever. It wasn't a loud, obvious event that everyone could see coming. No, it started quietly, almost innocuously. A 13-year-old girl named Lindsay Jo Reimer left her home on Cambridge Street one evening. She was just running a simple errand, a trip to the local Spar supermarket for a packet of cornflakes. It was the kind of thing any teenager might do without a second thought. Lindsay wasn't a stranger to this routine. She was well known in Hebden Bridge, a bright and popular student at Calder High School, loved by her friends and adored by her family. She had her whole life ahead of her, a life filled with dreams, laughter, and promise. But by the next morning, everything was different. Lindsay hadn't come home. Her bed was empty, her room untouched. Hours stretched into days, and her family's worry turned into dread. What began as a simple trip to the shop had turned into a mystery that would soon engulf an entire community and leave scars that have never fully healed. Months later, the truth about Lindsay's fate would surface, quite literally, from the cold, murky waters of the Rochdale Canal. And yet, despite countless interviews, groundbreaking forensic advances, and the tireless efforts of investigators, one question has remained unanswered for over 3 decades. What really happened to Lindsay Jo Reimer? As we piece together the events of that fateful night and the days that followed, I want you to think about this. Could something like this happen in your town? Could someone you know hold the answers to a question that has haunted a family and a community for so long? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This is the story of Lindsay Jo Reimer, a story of heartbreak, unanswered questions, and a search for justice that continues to this day. It was a cold, quiet evening in Hebden Bridge, November 7th, 1994. The kind of night that felt ordinary in every sense. Families were settling in for the night. Lights glowed softly in the windows, and the streets carried the faint hum of daily life winding down. For 13-year-old Lindsay Jo Reimer, it seemed like just another evening. Around 10 p.m., she left her home on Cambridge Street. Her mission was simple: pick up a packet of cornflakes from the Spar supermarket on Crown Street. It was a short walk, one she had taken many times before, and it didn't raise any alarms for her family. But along the way, Lindsay made an unexpected stop. She briefly visited the Trades Club on Holme Street, a place where locals gathered to share stories and drinks. Her mother was there, socializing with a friend. When Lindsay arrived, her mother invited her to stay, perhaps sensing the comfort of having her daughter close. But Lindsay declined. Maybe she felt she'd be back home soon, or maybe she just wanted to complete her errand quickly. Whatever her reasons, Lindsay left the club and headed toward the Spar. At exactly 10:22 p.m., Lindsay was captured on CCTV footage at the supermarket. She's seen purchasing the cornflakes she had set out to buy. The footage shows her calm and composed, no hint of distress or hesitation. By all accounts, she seemed fine, just a teenager going about her evening. The last confirmed sighting of Lindsay occurred not long after. At approximately 10:40 p.m., someone saw her standing at the bottom of Crown Street near the Memorial Garden. It was the last time anyone would see her alive. By the time morning came, the atmosphere in her home was no longer calm. Lindsay's family noticed something was wrong. Her bed hadn't been slept in, and her belongings were untouched. She hadn't shown up for her morning paper round, a responsibility she never neglected. Concern turned to panic as hours stretched on with no word from her. The family began retracing her steps, calling friends, neighbors, and anyone who might have seen her. But there was no trace of Lindsay, no sign of where she could have gone or why she hadn't come home. It was as if she had vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but questions. And now I want you to think about this. Was Lindsay's disappearance the result of a chance encounter with a stranger? Or could she have met someone she knew that night? Someone who lured her away under the guise of familiarity? Share your theories in the comments below as we continue to uncover what happened on that fateful night. 5 long months passed. Hebden Bridge had moved into spring, yet the shadow of Lindsay Jo Reimer's disappearance lingered over the community. The streets where she once walked felt heavier, her name whispered in every corner as hope for her safe return began to wane. The search for Lindsay had stretched across miles, but no one expected the discovery to come the way it did. On April 12, 1995, the Rochdale Canal, a waterway that winds through the heart of the region, became the scene of a grim revelation. Just 1 mile from the center of Hebden Bridge, at Rawdon Mill Lock, workers spotted something that would bring months of unanswered questions crashing down in an instant. Submerged beneath the dark, cold waters was Lindsay's body. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community. Lindsay's body was fully dressed in the same clothes she had worn the night she vanished. Her pockets still held the exact change from her trip to the Spar supermarket, a haunting detail that underscored the innocence of her errand. But the most chilling aspect of this discovery was how her body had been hidden. Weighed down by a heavy concrete boulder, Lindsay had been intentionally placed in the canal to ensure she would not surface. The act wasn't one of desperation or panic. It was calculated. The weight of the concrete suggested forethought, an effort to conceal her forever in the murky depths. Someone had gone to great lengths to ensure she wouldn't be found, but despite their efforts, the truth had begun to emerge. A post-mortem examination provided further clarity and heartbreak. The cause of death was confirmed as strangulation. Lindsay's larynx had been flattened against her spinal column, indicating the force used to end her life. Yet amid the horror, one detail stood out. There were no signs of sexual assault. The motive behind this heinous act remained elusive. As investigators pieced together the evidence, the methodical nature of her concealment couldn't be ignored. The choice to use a concrete boulder wasn't random. It pointed to someone who had planned this, someone who had thought through every step. But what kind of person would go to such lengths to hide the body of a 13-year-old girl? So I ask you, why do you think the killer chose to weigh Lindsay's body down with a concrete boulder? Could this act suggest premeditation, or was it a desperate attempt to cover up a crime after the fact? With the discovery of Lindsay's body, the nightmare for her family was only beginning. The search for answers, any answers, was far from over. West Yorkshire Police immediately launched an extensive investigation, hoping to make sense of the brutal murder and find the person responsible for ending Lindsay's life. But what followed was a complicated and grueling process. The police response was swift and thorough. Within the first few days after the body was found, investigators had already begun their work, questioning anyone who may have known Lindsay, interviewing her friends, family, and anyone who might have seen or spoken to her in the days leading up to her disappearance. Over 5,000 witness statements were gathered, a staggering number that highlighted the desperation to find any clue that could point toward her killer. The authorities went even further, canvassing the town and searching for any shred of evidence that might shed light on what happened. More than 1,200 vehicles were examined in the first year alone. Police scoured the area near the canal, hoping to find anything that could break the case wide open. Yet, With all these efforts, something crucial remained elusive. Despite all the interviews, all the witness statements, no one could offer a concrete explanation for Lindsay's disappearance that night. The trail of the killer remained disturbingly cold. Investigators were left with a haunting, unsettling feeling. The knowledge that someone, perhaps even someone they already knew, was out there, still walking free. The lack of tangible evidence in those early stages was a major obstacle. Was Lindsay's killer someone from the community, someone she had encountered before? Or was it a stranger who had been watching her from the shadows? The challenge for investigators was compounded by the fact that Hebden Bridge was a small town, a place where everyone knew everyone. This made the task of identifying potential suspects both easier and harder at the same time. Everyone had a theory, and the lines between friend and foe began to blur. It seemed as though everyone had seen something, but no one had seen the right thing. But the case wasn't just complicated for the investigators. The community, too, was rattled by the brutality of Lindsay's death. People who had once felt safe in their small town were now looking over their shoulders, wondering if they could trust their neighbors. A sense of fear and suspicion settled in, a feeling that lingered long after the police began their work. Through all of this, Lindsay's family continued to grapple with their grief. The overwhelming pain of losing their daughter was compounded by the absence of answers. How could this have happened to their vibrant, innocent girl? Who would do such a thing? Now, I want you to think. Do you think the investigation missed any critical leads? Was there something that could have been done differently in those early stages that might have led to answers sooner? More than 2 decades had passed since Lindsay's tragic death, and for years, her family was left to carry the heavy burden of not knowing who was responsible. Investigators, too, were facing a cold case, a puzzle with too many missing pieces. But in 2016, a breakthrough occurred that offered a glimmer of hope in the search for justice. A Canadian forensic team, working with the West Yorkshire Police, made a discovery that could change everything. They identified a DNA profile from the evidence collected at the crime scene. The significance of this was monumental. DNA analysis, especially from the 1990s, could be the key to unlocking the mystery that had haunted the community for years. For the first time in the case, there was tangible evidence that could potentially identify Lindsay's killer. The discovery reignited the investigation and sparked renewed hope that the person responsible for this unspeakable crime could finally be caught. But as the DNA evidence emerged, so did more questions. Was this new lead enough to secure an arrest? And if so, who could be behind it all? In November 2016, the case took a dramatic turn. A 63-year-old man from Bradford was arrested on suspicion of Lindsay's murder. The arrest seemed like it could be the breakthrough that everyone had been waiting for, but things took a twist when he was released on bail without facing any charges. The investigation had hit another dead end, leaving the public and Lindsay's family once again in a state of uncertainty. Just a few months later, in April 2017, another suspect, a 68-year-old man, was arrested, again in Bradford. Could this be the one? Would this arrest finally bring justice to Lindsay's memory? Unfortunately, just like the previous arrest, no charges were filed, and the case once again slipped into the shadows. Despite these high-profile arrests, the investigation continued to circle back on itself, with no clear answers emerging. But the renewed interest in Lindsay's case also sparked new insights from those who had been involved from the beginning. In 2016, Detective Superintendent Mark Burns, who had been a key figure in the investigation, made a striking statement. He suggested there was a distinct possibility that the killer was someone already known to the investigators. This revelation echoed the frustration and confusion that had been plaguing the case from the start. Was the answer right in front of them? Had the killer always been within reach, but somehow slipped through the cracks? As each new development unfolded, it was clear that this case was far from over. The DNA evidence, the arrests, and the detective's theory about a known suspect raised more questions than answers. Do you believe that the DNA evidence could still lead to an arrest? After all this time, could it finally bring the killer to justice? Or has too much time passed for the evidence to make a difference? Share your thoughts in the comments below as we continue to explore the mystery of Lindsay's murder. For over 3 decades, the Reimer family has carried a weight most of us could never imagine. Losing Lindsay was an unthinkable tragedy, but the unanswered questions surrounding her death have compounded their grief in ways that words struggle to convey. While the investigation faced setbacks, the family's determination to find justice for Lindsay never wavered. In 2016, Juliette Reimer, Lindsay's younger sister, chose to speak publicly for the first time. Her words were powerful, painting a vivid picture of the devastating toll this loss had taken on the family. "A piece of everyone's soul is missing," she said, her voice filled with a mix of heartbreak and resilience. Getting the answers wouldn't change the hurt, but it would help bring closure to us all. Juliet's statement offered a glimpse into the private pain that the Reimer family has endured for so long. It wasn't just the loss of Lindsay, it was the loss of normalcy, the constant cloud of uncertainty, and the knowledge that someone out there was responsible but had never been held accountable. Juliet's voice, though filled with sadness, also carried a message of strength, a reminder that, despite the passage of time, they would not give up on finding the truth. The family's pursuit of justice has been marked by persistence and hope. Each anniversary of Lindsay's disappearance and death brings renewed appeals for information, a reminder to the community and beyond that this case is not forgotten. They've partnered with investigators, participated in public campaigns, and bravely shared their story with the media, all in the hope that someone somewhere will come forward with a piece of information that changes everything. For the Reimer family, closure is more than just identifying Lindsay's killer. It's about honoring her memory, ensuring her story isn't reduced to a headline or a cold case file. It's about reclaiming a sense of peace, even if the pain of losing Lindsay can never truly fade. And it's not just the family that seeks this closure, it's the community of Hebden Bridge, too. For years, Lindsay's story has been a reminder of how fragile safety can feel, even in the closest-knit towns. Her case has left a mark, one that can only begin to heal when justice is served. But here's the question I leave to you. How would you support a family in their pursuit of justice after so many years? Would you share their story, amplify their voice, or offer your own insight? He deserves. As the years turned into decades, Lindsay's case remained one of West Yorkshire's most haunting mysteries. Yet, in October 2024, on the 30th anniversary of her disappearance, a renewed effort was launched to finally uncover the truth. Crime Watch Live, a platform that has brought critical breakthroughs to countless cases, dedicated a segment to Lindsay's story. During this televised appeal, the lead detective, who has worked tirelessly on the case, made a striking statement. He urged anyone with information, no matter how insignificant it might seem, to come forward. "There's a distinct possibility," he said, "that the killer is already known to us." Those words hung heavy, suggesting that the answers could be closer than anyone realized. The renewed appeal reignited public interest in a case that had never truly left the community's mind. Hebden Bridge, once again, found itself at the center of discussions about justice, grief, and the chilling reality of unsolved crimes. People from all over the country began revisiting the details of the case, sharing theories online, and debating what might have happened on that fateful night in 1994. Some community members speculated that the killer had to be someone local, someone who knew the area well enough to conceal Lindsay's body in such a calculated manner. Others wondered if the DNA evidence uncovered in 2016 might finally match a suspect, given the advancements in forensic technology. The role of media and public participation in unsolved cases cannot be overstated. Programs like Crime Watch Live and social media platforms have become essential tools in keeping these stories alive, allowing people to share information that could prove invaluable to investigators. The Reimer family, too, has recognized this, continuing to use every opportunity to remind the public that Lindsay's case is far from closed. In this digital age, cases like Lindsay's can gain momentum in ways that weren't possible decades ago. Every share, every comment, every theory adds another layer to the collective effort to solve this mystery. It's a testament to the power of public engagement, to the idea that someone out there, maybe even someone watching this very video, holds the missing piece that could finally bring this case to an end. What do you think about the renewed appeal? Could it be the turning point the investigation needs? Is it possible that someone, even after all this time, still holds the key to solving this case? As we reach the end of Lindsay Jo Reimer's story, we are left with a chilling reminder of how fragile life can be and how quickly tragedy can shatter even the most peaceful of communities. Lindsay was just 13 years old, a bright, kind, and loving daughter, sister, and friend, when her life was taken in a way that remains a heartbreaking mystery to this day. From her last walk to the Spar supermarket, to the grim discovery of her body in the Rochdale Canal, to the decades-long investigation that has followed, her case has left countless unanswered questions. Despite significant efforts, groundbreaking forensic advancements, and moments of renewed hope, Lindsay's killer has never been brought to justice. Her family has endured an unimaginable loss, spending over 30 years searching for the truth and holding on to hope that one day they will find closure. Solving cold cases like Lindsay's isn't just about justice. It's about giving families the peace they deserve. Each piece of evidence, each tip, and each theory brings investigators one step closer to the answers that could finally end their decades-long torment. And it's about more than just one family or one town. It's about a collective commitment to ensure no victim's story is ever forgotten. Now it's your turn to be a part of this conversation. What do you think happened to Lindsay that night? Could someone out there still hold the key to solving this case? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. By raising awareness and keeping Lindsay's story alive, we may help uncover the truth. If you found this video compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Sharing this video could make all the difference in spreading Lindsay's story to someone who might hold a vital piece of information. Lindsay Jo Reimer's story remains a call for truth, justice, and remembrance. Together, we might help bring her family the answers they've waited decades for.